Thanks for subscribing to and downloading Plant Talk with your host, Fred Howard. Plant Talk is sponsored by Franklin Park Conservatory and Botanical Gardens in Columbus, Ohio, featuring exotic plant collections and displays, seasonal art and nature-based exhibitions, outdoor gardens, and a variety of educational programming. fpconservatory.org. Now, here's your host, Fred Howard.
Good morning, Ohio gardeners. Last week, as I recall, I mentioned it was starting to get dry in my yard and maybe other places too. Well, as of Wednesday evening, no way. 1.6 inches of rain in a right short period of time. And I'm thinking about the good it's doing the plants, and I'm actually concerned because the wind that came with it was rocking my trees pretty good, but no big deal, just a little twig here, a little twig there. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me, did I or did I not close the windows before I came in the house? Well, guess what? The car has since dried. The wind was strong enough. It was blowing in from the north, 2/3 of the way across the inside of the cabin, and the window on the right side, which was up, wasn't even wet. So, I mean, we're talking about rain coming in hard. Happily, my lawn was not so very dry. Lawn and gardens were not so dry that it all ran off to the street. Now, I'm sure a good bit of it, when it comes that fast, got to the street real quick. Matter of fact, we even had flood warnings. But still in all, it watered fairly deeply. I went out soon after the storm was over and measured it, and I know that the catch was as honest as it can get. And in my yard, 1.6 inches. Well, so be it. The car has dried, and now we're getting lots of sun. And today looks like a day Mark and I were talking about earlier this morning, about one we deserve. We waited all winter for a day like this. Supposed to hit a top out of 85 and not be so sticky hot. Sticky, that is, as hot as concerned. And then, want you to look up, though, because that wind that rocked my trees may have rocked yours, too. And it can do some damage up in the tree that you don't see. It isn't necessarily always a branch on the ground. Now, a few things do come down when they're dead and loose. But at the same time, do take a look. After every storm of that nature, where we didn't get a tornado by any means, but a darn good blow, be sure that something hasn't broken off, that it hit you on the gourd if it comes down while you're mowing under that tree the next time.
Sitting alongside Fred, I am Mark Neuse in our Plant Talk studios. And if you have a question or comment this morning, you'd like to join the conversation, 1-866-PLANT-TALK with 2 T's. That's 1-866-752-6882. And, Fred, boy, a lot in color right now. It's beautiful.
It is, Mark. And at the same time, we're down slightly in numbers, and that's to be expected. We've kind of gone past, we'll call it the heavy things, heavy bloomers of spring. We're getting over into the things of summer now, and that's just exactly as it is expected. We dropped, in my yard, because it depends on what you have used to get the color. In my yard, we've dropped down to 35 things. Now, down 2 is a strange statement to make. But I had to look at a few blossoms on a couple things ending, and just a few blossoms open on a few of the things like coneflower that are just now getting ready to start. So that's the way it is.
Again, our toll-free number, 1-866-PLANT-TALK with 2 T's, or 1-866-752-6882. Fred's Plant of the Week coming up next. We're just getting started this morning on Plant Talk. Stick with us.
This summer at Franklin Park Conservatory and Botanical Gardens, the gardens are in full color. Welcome its tropical and native butterflies in flight in the indoor Pacific Island Water Garden. View the conservatory's bonsai collection and experience the exhibition Origami in the Garden. Find details at fpconservatory.org.
And welcome back to the program. Mark Neuse here alongside Fred Howard, the Ohio nurseryman. It's time now for the Franklin Park Conservatory Plant of the Week, brought to you by Bonide Products. And, Fred, your Plant of the Week.
Well, the Plant of the Week, Mark, is one that I reached out to several years ago. Elderberry, as such, is a roadside plant, the gravel area along a train track, etc. Not an unusual plant at all. However, Well beyond my understanding, someone had come up with black lace elderberry. It is a deep burgundy as it comes out in the spring. It is, going to fade a little bit. It will be just a little bit less deep in color, kind of a greenish red the rest of the summer. And right now, and for the last almost 2 weeks, there have been great big flower heads on the plant, running from 4 to 6 or 7 inches wide, flat clusters of flowers that absolutely show a beautiful cream color, not quite snow white, but a cream against that deep burgundy that is quite attractive. Now, I was told in tag red that it would get fairly large. Happily, I followed the directions for a change and put it in the back of the garden, right near a wood fence, with the idea of it breaking up, getting tall enough to break up the height of the 6-foot fence so it didn't look like a straight line across the backyard. Lo and behold, these several years later, plant is approximately 15 feet tall, about 12 feet wide, and just really quite remarkable. Now, it is not a really hard-wooded plant in terms of as strong as a broom handle type of thing, but it does hold itself up there very nicely. I will come along soon as it finishes blooming and trim off some of the dead flower heads, trim it just enough to keep it stable on its own base, and then I do watch to where I might have to lash it, the lower stems, to the fence at some point. But at the same time, it took the winds the other night quite nicely. The color is fantastic, especially from, the early spring until now, and even for the balance of the summer. So do put it where it can get some size. Black lace elderberry. Common plant, new variety, magnificent.
And, Fred, it's interesting because I know one of the things you wanted to talk about today was proper placement, proper site selection for a plant, and you're talking about the black lace elderberry. Talk about how important it is for site selection.
Well, Mark, it is overwhelmingly important. There are plants that can tolerate dawn to dark sun, deep shade, those that are medium shade or medium sun, however you want to call it. There are those that can handle a heavy soil. Others that have to have a lighter soil, by that meaning that the density of the soil allows more water to pass through the lighter soils, so you have to water a little bit more often and so on. It's really important to find the spot for the plant. The one that jumps to my forefront in my head is the dogwood. Everybody wants a dogwood. They're magnificent. But a common dogwood is a tree for understory. That is, great big trees in the woods, oaks or whatever else they might be. It is a plant for a well-drained soil. Now, it doesn't have to be dry within hours, but at the same time, it doesn't sit in a boggy situation. Even in an area of the woods that is a boggy spot, there won't be any dogwoods. Then we come to the factor of acidity. We actually, at least in 2/3 of the state, we have to add acid to get sufficient for dogwoods to grow. And until you meet those basic conditions, dogwood is not apt to grow very well. Now, I get done telling you that, and lo and behold, I know where there are many dogwoods planted in the smallest of holes. They may be a little too deep in the ground. They may be standing on the southwest corner of a structure. Everything negative, and the plant still does fine. So we have to know that the plants don't read the books, Mark. But at the same time, just like on the elderberry, I did read the tag, which I frequently disallow, thinking I know enough. And for sure, I'm glad I put it in the back of the bed, or I'd have to walk around to the other family's property to even see the rest of the plants. So it helps to pick a site that reads right on the tag. In other words, if it says well-drained, it really means well-drained. If it talks about something in the serviceberry family that can handle a little bit of boggy soil, now, a little bit, it can stand on the edge of the creek, not in the creek type of thing. So you just go with that. And then even at that, we know that plants don't read the books. We know that there are all kinds of, I'm going to call them abnormalities or unusual things that happen in nature. So at least start with the directions, and you'll be a far more successful gardener.
Had a call just a few minutes ago of a nice lady, and she didn't want to be on the radio, but she's been having some trouble with her knockout roses.
Okay.
She called you a couple of weeks ago, and she's been treating them with some of the rose products. She used one called 3-in-1, but she's having a problem with, we hear a lot about black spot, but she's having black right down in the blossoms or in the center of her blossoms. Any idea on what that might be?
Well, no. An idea, and at the same time, I can't be at all sure. But roses are susceptible to various things. Fungal diseases are one of them. Too much shade is another. Now, even though the knockouts can grow in shade, and I am growing one in shade, they can tolerate that, but they're more prone then to fungal diseases and so on. There's also a little insect that gets into the flower bud. It is so darn small that it starts inside, internally in the bud as the bud is forming, and by the time the petals open out, it has turned black in the middle, and it just is not at all a good-looking plant. Now, if that should be the case, I'm going to have her, I'm going to say that she should start with raking the mulch aside. Now, there's probably nothing wrong with that mulch to put it under lilacs and forsythia and etc., so she doesn't have to waste it. Scrape off literally the top quarter inch at the most, maybe an eighth of an inch of soil. Try to take any eggs that are in that area away from beneath the plants. Then, new mulch, and cut off, and this is going to be disastrous, at least for a little bit, cut off all of the existing buds that are coming into flower. This little creature is inside. There are systemic insecticides that can kill it, but I've been told by some rose growers that once that rascal starts in a plant, the plant can turn useless in very short order. So where I have never had to fight it, I would say that's one of the things I can tell her, but by all means stay with the fungicidal controls and keep the plant fertilized, pray for enough rain or the hose, and let's just say we'll talk again in another 3 weeks.
You can always email Fred a question if you don't have time to call, if it's not convenient. Just email him a question anytime during the week. Just go to fred@planttalkradio.com. Or go to our website and click on the Ask Fred button and send in your question. We've got several from this week, and we will go over those coming up next on Plant Talk. Stick with us.
This summer at Franklin Park Conservatory and Botanical Gardens, the gardens are in full color. Welcome its tropical and native butterflies in flight in the indoor Pacific Island Water Garden. View the conservatory's bonsai collection and experience the exhibition Origami in the Garden. Find details at spconservatory.org.
And welcome back to the program. Mark News here alongside Fred Hauer, the Ohio nurseryman. And Fred, we did get several email questions this week at fred@planttalkradio.com. Linda wrote in, and she says, I listen to your program as much as possible, so thanks for that. I've been wondering about my 20-plus-year-old Austrian pine. In the last several months, they've been thinning and looking brown a ways up the tree. The other evergreens nearby look okay. Is there anything we can do?
Well, yes, and I'm going to start with prayer, and I'm halfway serious. The 20-year-old is a clue to me. The fact that Austrian pine is a two needles in each bundle type of pine, along with Scotch pine, mugo, and so on. And they are all susceptible to a fungal disease. Sphaeropsis blight is the old name. I think there's a new name out there. It goes by both at this point. And it is a matter of as much the slowing of the air movement in your entire community as it is what happens in your yard. Now, your yard, of course, is the center point of it. My Austrian pines have been sprayed for the last 15 or even maybe more years, and I've caused the disease to stay, managed is a better way to put it than anything else. It's certainly not been cured. Last year, I'm not sure. The sprays were put on. The timing was right, at least as best we could tell. And all of a sudden, the same thing happened as is probably happening to her plants. The bottom part is the last to dry normally. It is therefore a perfect environment for the spore of the fungus. The fungus gets